What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 69 of Week in Review. My name is Sean, and on this week's show, we're talking about The Hustle, Detective Pikachu, the Sea of Thieves anniversary update, and we're looking forward to this week's new releases. First up this week is The Hustle, and it's one of those movies where I don't have a ton to say about it. I enjoyed it. It was one of my more anticipated movies this quarter, which is kind of weird, but the trailers got me, and I was like, I kind of just want to watch like a silly, dumb, funny movie, and that's exactly what I got. It's weird because it seems like they were like, Rebel Wilson, we're going to have you produce this movie, we're going to have you produce and star in it, and we're going to have you and your friend Anne Hathaway, and we're going to go to France, and we're going to go live this luxurious life for 4 months, we're going to shoot this movie at some point, we're going to film in about 7 locations, we'll get enough of a story and enough acting out of it for an hour-and-a-half feature, we'll release it in theaters, it'll probably get its money back, bing bang boom, and that's kind of what you get here. And it's interesting to watch the contrasting styles. Like, Anne Hathaway is far and away better than she needs to be in a movie like this. Like, she actually turns in a performance that's interesting. Like, no matter how despicable her character is or how awful her character is, she's still interesting and likable in her own way, to where you're like, man, she's like kind of a piece of crap, but I'm still rooting for her. Between the two characters, Anne Hathaway's character is the darker side of it, where she goes in, she wants to rob these people, she's going to rob these people, that's what's going to happen. Rebel Wilson's character is a little bit different in that she has some heart. She kind of looks at it and goes, if the man dictates the situation a certain way, then I'll rob him because I won't feel bad. She kind of uses her looks and men's anticipation of what she's supposed to look like, and when she shows up, like, how do they react? And at that point, she goes, well, I'm going to rob them or not. One thing that I thought was weird about this movie is the way the trailers framed it seemed like it was more of a team-up movie, and what it is in actuality is a rivalry movie of two characters trying to best each other to meet a certain goal to prove who's the best. The loser has to go home. And about halfway through the movie, I got to a point where I was like, I don't know if I like this. I kind of wish they were teaming up. But as the movie progressed, I thought, no, I'm wrong. Like, it's way more fun to have them as rivals kind of butting heads and trying to get the best of each other. The Hustle is a short, sweet, to-the-point movie. It's the kind of movie I like. It's the kind of movie that I would like to encourage film studios to make if for some reason some film executive is out there. I know it only has like a 15% on the thermometer, but what I would like to encourage you to do is make shorter movies that are like an hour and a half, because that's very nice. I appreciate that. It's not too long, it's not too short, it gets in, it does what it wants to do, it gets out, it gives you two likable leads that bounce off each other pretty well. This is a complete and utter popcorn movie. I saw the movie on Thursday, I'm recording this on Monday. It's left my brain. I know that I liked it, and I know that I enjoyed it, and that's about all I can tell you. I can tell you the broad strokes of the plot, kind of what happens. There's like a cool performance from Dean Norris, who plays like a weird, like kind of almost over-the-top Texan that I found really funny. Some stuff happens, it ends the way it ends, I liked it, I don't know, there's not much to this movie. You're not going to walk out of it being like, man, I learned this important lesson, or this like really filled my soul with a good message, or like it made me think. Like, you're going to go in, you're going to go, haha, that's funny, and then you're going to leave and probably forget it ever existed. When it comes to The Hustle, the point I want to make is that I had fun with the movie, and there's nothing wrong with going in, sitting in a movie theater, watching some trailers, laughing at a movie for an hour and a half, and walking out and never thinking about it again. That's totally fine, and I'm very happy with the way The Hustle turned out. The second movie on this week's show is Detective Pikachu, and actually, Ashley and I got pretty crazy, and we went and saw Detective Pikachu and The Hustle on the same night, and it actually worked out pretty well, because one of them started at 4, and the other one started at 7, and the first one ended at 6, and then we went downstairs and got some food, and then came back up for the one at 7, and the first one, anyway, the point is, Detective Pikachu was the first movie that we saw, but the second movie that's being reviewed on this show. Detective Pikachu is a very interesting movie. It's had a weird road to where it is now, released in theaters. When it was first announced, it was kind of weird because Detective Pikachu is a weird, like, offshoot game in the Pokemon franchise that isn't super well known. It doesn't follow the typical plot of the Pokemon games, which is usually, hey, get 8 badges and become the best trainer. So that, like, put it in, like, kind of like a weird, like, what is this movie going to be sort of thing. The next step that happened was that Ryan Reynolds was announced to play the voice of Pikachu, and I don't think anyone really was able to wrap their head around what that would mean. Ryan Reynolds at the time was coming fresh off the success of Deadpool, I believe, and was on a roll. People have always liked Ryan Reynolds, but he had never really hit that, like, gold mine sort of thing. Like, he'd been in stuff where you're like, yeah, I like him, but it wasn't the smash success that Deadpool was. So it kind of sounded like a weird casting choice, and it was like one of those weird things of, is this going to work? And I don't think people really grasped what it was going to be. The next step in the process, at least for me, because I didn't follow this movie super closely, I followed the broad strokes of these 3 steps. Step number 3 would be the trailer comes out, and the trailer somehow looks wonderful. Like, people's minds were blown when this trailer came out, and they're like, this could be a genuinely great movie. Like, it has an interesting style, it has a cool, like, concept, like, it's interesting the way they merge the humans and the Pokemon, and it's, like, kind of this weird mishmash. You got to see how the Ryan Reynolds factor played into it, where he was going to be kind of that quippy, almost Deadpool-like sort of character that works with Justice Smith's main character. You got that kind of the idea of, like, a buddy cop movie, and that piqued my interest. And then it finally came out, and it's actually very good. I don't think it's great. I think it's good, verging on great. I have some issues with the last third of the movie, but I think that there's a lot to like here. And I think it starts with Ryan Reynolds. Like, I think Justice Smith is fantastic in this movie, and I was a little worried that he wasn't going to get enough screen time or have enough to do, because I was kind of thinking they would probably focus on the Ryan Reynolds aspect of it. But it actually takes a while before Pikachu even shows up, and it establishes the world. It establishes that Justice Smith's character wanted to be a Pokemon trainer but didn't follow through on that, and now he works in insurance. He's fallen away from his dad, his mom has passed away, and it sets up this very, like, grounded and almost kind of dark world where it's not like as happy and bright as you would think it would be. It also establishes some of the rules of the world. You need to pick your Pokemon, and you need to connect, you catch Pokemon, you train Pokemon to battle, and those are kind of some of the general rules of the Pokemon world. And that's what I like so much about Detective Pikachu. We're going to take a little detour here for a second, is that it's a detective movie, and it's a buddy cop movie sort of thing that's in a Pokemon world, but sets up a few smaller elements that at least puts them in the back of your head. And it uses the star power of Ryan Reynolds to get people like Ashley, who could not care less about Pokemon, in the seats. Where, like, I showed her the trailer, I was like, hey, here's this movie, do you want to go? And she goes, well, I mean, I'll go for Ryan Reynolds. And that blew my mind. Like, I sat here being like, this is the most hopeless trailer I've probably ever shown her, to be like, hey, would you like to go to this movie with me? And then she goes, yeah, Ryan Reynolds, the power of Ryan Reynolds and his handsomeness. Big double thumbs up. And what's even crazier is that she actually really enjoyed the movie. And that's a testament to how well this movie is made. And it's also probably a testament to the fact that it's not overwhelmingly Pokemon. Like, there's no Ash, there's no Brock, there's no Misty, there's no Team Rocket, there's none of that shenanigans, we're catching Pokemon, I want badges, malarkey. It's a detective buddy cop movie first and foremost. It leverages the power of Ryan Reynolds, who has great chemistry with Justice Smith, and it follows a fairly simple plot of, we have to find my dad. That's all you really need. And you like the characters you're supposed to like, which is kind of a miracle in one case, because for some reason they made the entrance of the reporter character tonally completely inconsistent with the way the rest of the movie had been set up. Like, everything's kind of like, not like dark, but like more of a serious, like grounded sort of thing, as grounded as you can get with a Pokemon movie. But then she comes in with like this like cartoonish Lois Lane, like Scooby-Doo persona of like, I always have a nose for the scoop and I'm always doing this. And like, well, this doesn't make any sense consistently with the tone of the movie that you're trying to set up. And I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if it's something that they looked at on set and they're like, hey, we need to lighten this up or tone this down a little bit to match the consistency of the rest of the movie. But it actually works itself out throughout the movie, and you actually do end up liking her. But it was one of those things where I was sitting there, I was going like, oh no, I don't like this character at all. But as the movie proceeds, you go, no, I like her. I like her and her Psyduck. She's cool. We're fine. I liked her overall. Ryan Reynolds is great as Pikachu. He's very quippy, very funny. The movie's humorous and heartfelt. There's one really great emotional sequence that actually got me to tear up a little bit. That's right, a 29-year-old man, almost cried at a Pokemon movie. that is a thing that happened in 2019. That is absurd. But that's just how well this movie is made. It connected emotionally in a way that I did not anticipate, and I thought it was just, it's such a wonderful scene. It might actually be the best scene in the movie. As the movie goes along and things kind of start to fall into place, I think it missteps a little bit in the final act or so. There is a big, like, climactic battle sequence that I wasn't wildly entertained by. And for as well as it sets up the rules of the world as far as like how Pokemon training works, there is one rule that shows up that's never really shown that I saw, and it kind of threw me off where I like everything else in the movie up until that point felt like it meshed correctly, like it followed a certain set of rules, things were understandable, and I looked at it and I was like, okay, I understand that the way they structured this sentence, I'm looking at it too narrowly. I need to look at it wider to apply it to different things, and therefore the clues are there in front of you for you to figure out if you're paying enough attention. There is one thing that shows up that doesn't make any sense because it's never shown, and it's a pretty integral plot point. And when they show the result of the rule that they have not explained, I felt cheated. The problem is, I would be willing to bet that a lot of people who know a lot about Pokemon, which I do not, I have a very low to moderate knowledge of like the very first generation of Pokemon, there will be a subsection of people that understand that aspect of it, but it is not shown to a general audience. And seeing as how this is a movie that is meant to appeal to general audiences, hence the Ryan Reynolds hiring, that rule needs to be clearly defined for it to not feel like a cheat or a cop-out, because that's what it felt like to me. I also just, I don't know, there's something about the final climactic sequence that just didn't mesh with me. Aside, even if you take the one rule out that I didn't like and I felt cheated with, I still think that it just didn't quite work as well. Like they were right there on the brink of a great movie, and that last portion of it kind of knocked it back a little bit. Overall, I think it's a very good movie. I think there's a lot to like in this movie if you don't like Pokemon. I think there's a lot to like in this movie if you do like Pokemon. I think there's a lot to like if you just want to watch a buddy cop comedy, and that is a great thing. I love the way it sets up the rules of the world so that if there is like another Pokemon movie, people at least have it in the back of their head how Pokemon stuff works. Finding them, training them, catching them, battling them, that sort of thing. And you can start to work in some of the more recognizable, I guess, plot devices like Ash or Brock or Misty, Team Rocket, that sort of thing. It was a very enjoyable experience, and that was kind of the thread that ran through both movies I saw, where I was just like, I'm having a good time with this movie. It's not going to necessarily stick with me. They're probably not going to be on the top of my favorite movies of the year, but they were movies that I enjoyed while I was in the theater, and I never was like, this is too long or this needs to be cut short. I just enjoyed what it was, even if there were some minor problems. I thought Detective Pikachu was a very good movie. As a bonus for going to see Detective Pikachu on opening weekend, I was able to get a pack of Detective Pikachu Pokemon cards, and I hadn't opened them because I kind of forgot about them. They were handed to me, and then I handed them to Ashley, and she put them in her wallet, and then I got distracted and actually kind of forgot about them. When we went up to go see The Hustle, there was a guy who was already confused about the tickets and how they work on the phone, like through the app or whatever, and he was already at like confusion level 8, and he had bought tickets for 4 to Detective Pikachu, so he got free Pokemon cards. And the guy at the ticket booth was like, here, would you like these? And he somehow went from a confusion level 8 to like confusion level 10, because I'm pretty sure he had no idea what in the hell these are. So I figured I would open these up for you and show you what I got. They should all have one of the cards, because the point is to go and like complete your collection, I guess. I already looked at the bottom one. But it also came with, came with this. That shows you kind of what kind of cards you can get. Which is going to make the complete set a little bit of a challenge, because you only get 2 cards. But I think you can get a total of 5 unique cards to this pack. The GX cards you can get in the boxes, which I unboxed here on the channel. But I think that Pikachu that's all the way on this side, I think that's the one that's like exclusive to the pack, because I think I've seen the one that's next to it before. And then the Bulbasaur, the Psyduck, and the Snubbull those look to have different poses than their case file counterparts. So right here we have, oh, this one's just an official merchandise thing. Doesn't even show a code for cards or anything. And then, oops, I got this guy. Fantastic. Just what I needed, a Merle. And then you get, bam, Detective Pikachu in the coffee shop. Very cool. So yeah, that was the opening weekend thing. A little bit of a limited edition item, I guess, to finish it off. Next up is the Sea of Thieves anniversary update. I talked about Sea of Thieves last year, actually about this time last year, for like 3 weeks in a row because I really enjoyed the game. And they released an anniversary update a couple of weeks ago to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Sea of Thieves. And I like what's in the update. There are 2 big new additions to it. The first is fishing, which is a bit of a pain in the butt because I didn't find any sort of like tutorial. So I ended up just throwing out the casting the rod. I don't understand fishing very well. I threw the thingy in the water and then fish came and swam up to it. And then what you need to do is you need to pull the right trigger and then find a spot on the left stick that isn't vibrating very much. And then pull it in when it's not vibrating and then hope that the line doesn't snap. If it sounds confusing, it's because it is. And what's super weird is that fishing mechanics are different across every game I've played. If you look at, there are 3 games that I have talked about on this show. 2 of them for sure, 1 of them maybe. If you take Stardew Valley, Sea of Thieves, and My Time at Portia, all 3 of those games have vastly different fishing mechanics. I wish there was like a more unified way of doing fishing in a video game because it's just kind of a pain in the, like, every game has drive controls that are pretty much the same. Every first-person shooter has controls that are pretty much the same. There are small variations here or there, but none of them are as different as fishing in games. And it's kind of frustrating, and I wish there was a, like, hey, you can go talk to this guy and he'll show you how to fish so that you understand it and you don't keep throwing your line. Again, I don't know fishing. So you don't keep throwing stuff out there and it keeps snapping and you're like, I don't know what I'm really doing wrong. It took probably like 6 or 7 tries before I even caught one fish. And it was a little bit frustrating, but I was finally able to catch one and I felt like I was making progress, but I still didn't feel like I quite grasped it as well as I wanted to. And it was kind of one of those things where I was like, I don't really want to frustrate myself more and keep banging my head, so I'm just not gonna worry about it. The other big new addition to this is the Tall Tales, and this is a more like narrative-based sort of adventure. Tall Tales, basically you go into one of the taverns, you look at a book, you'll take a book with you, and it has 10 pages of information that you need to dissect to figure out where you need to go to find a number of different items to get to your final goal, which is some sort of thing. I don't really know because the 10 pages of information are very obtuse, and the biggest trouble I had jumping back into this update, because I haven't played the game in probably like 10 months or so, is there isn't like a, hey, here's a kind of reminder, like a refresher of how things work and what you're looking to do. So it's almost like picking up a game brand new where you're like, I know how to play this at some point, but I don't remember well enough. And I wish there was like a thing that was like, hey, here's like just a brief little tutorial, because the Tall Tales are very different from the clue maps that you get that have 2 to 4 clues that lead you around an island trying to find a buried treasure. There's 10 pages of information to dissect and I don't know what I'm looking for. I was so focused on like, okay, page 1 has this, and so I need to look for this. Well, in actuality, after looking up a guide, I had to go all the way to page 10 to find 2 pieces of information. That's what I'm looking for now. And then on pages like 8 and 9 are the 2 islands that it's become, or the item is between. And then you have to kind of go backwards. And so it was a weird thing to try to put together because I had no idea what I was looking for. And it was only after looking at a guide that I kind of started to grasp what they were going for as far as what is in the book. And I don't know, it was obtuse in a way that didn't feel intuitive, and even some of the clues that you get on those the clue maps that lead you around the island can be really frustrating because you're not sure what you're looking for, and I get a little too hyper-focused in one area. That, granted, that is a very, like, Sean point of this review would be that I need to be better at taking things and applying them to a broader context and not just like, hey, here's this one thing and then you slap it on top. That's a me thing. So this update does two things. One, it reminds me of why I enjoyed this game so much, and it got me back into it. I think we played probably about 13 hours and we streamed a bunch of it, and it was a really awesome time, which is exactly what this sort of update is supposed to do. It's supposed to reinvigorate your enthusiasm for the game, get you back in, get you playing, keep Sea of Thieves on your mind and go like, man, I want to go home and I want to play Sea of Thieves. The second thing it does is, for as much as it reinvigorates my interest and excitement about this game and it reminds me of how much I love it, it shows that they haven't quite moved it as forward as I had hoped that they would move it. You can still only carry 5 shots for your gun at one time. You can only run one voyage at a time. Even though you can run a tall tale and a voyage at the same time, you can't run multiple voyages at the same time. I want to make sure that that's in there because I know you can run one and one. You just can't run multiple voyages from what I saw. And that's super frustrating. Like, that stuff feels like something that should have been figured out by now. Like, why am I only able to carry 5 shots for my gun? Why that's so frustrating is because you end up spending a bunch of time swimming back and forth between your boat and the island, and not every island has an ammo chest, and when you're doing the bounty hunts, you need a lot of shots because sword fighting still isn't super great. It's also a reminder of the fact that all of your guns and weapons are the same amount of power that they were, and there isn't much upgradability as far as damage is concerned. It mostly is just concerned with how it looks, which is fine, I guess, but it does feel like it is a very stagnant game. And for as much as, like, all video games are repetitive, and I totally understand that, it's how you get around that repetitiousness that is the key in games. And I think Sea of Thieves struggles in that regard, where it's like, it still takes 7 shots for me to get this skeleton, or the tougher level skeletons. Whereas if you look at like a Call of Duty or even like a Battlefield, you get more powerful weapons, so it feels like you're upgrading and you have that kind of carrot on the end of the stick. Is like, if I get this next level, I can get this new gun, which allows me to be more powerful. If they had that carrot on the end of the stick in Sea of Thieves, I think it would make it that much better of an experience. I also think you should be able to upgrade maybe the capacity of things you carry. Some stuff along those lines would really go a long way for quality of life improvements in this game, because as it stands now, it gets in my head a lot of like, I still do the same amount of damage in hour 30 that I do in hour 1, and that's kind of frustrating. The anniversary update overall, though, is a great new addition to Sea of Thieves. Because I haven't played much in the last 10 months or so, I actually got to experience a lot more of the update stuff. I got to see the Kraken, which seems to appear quite a number of times in the amount of time that we were playing. We saw it probably 4 or 5 times, which is pretty cool. Being on a sloop is a little underpowered to take on a creature of that size. It's very large, and we saw a number of megalodunes, and we had a pretty good battle with one, but we ran out of wood and our boat ended up sinking. So I don't know, that is separate from the anniversary update. The anniversary update, though, does what it needs to do. It reinvigorates my interest in the game, and it reminds me of why I love it so much, even if there are some frustrating shortcomings that come with that and remind me that maybe this game hasn't come quite as far as it should have in the first year. But I'm curious to see what they do with year 2, because this is a games as a service. I don't think we're going to see like a numbered sequel anytime soon, but I am curious to see what that next content pack looks like. Hopefully we'll get some cool new stuff and maybe a little bit more on the progression side, as I would like to see that sort of stuff. But it's a great update, and you should check it out. If you have played Sea of Thieves, maybe it can get you back in the game. If you haven't played Sea of Thieves, now is the perfect time to jump in, because there's lots of people like myself playing it again. Finally, on this week's show, we'll look at the new releases on Blu-ray. Fighting with My Family is out. I reviewed it earlier this year. It's a very good movie that I really enjoyed. And King Kong from 2005 is out in 4K. So if you ever wanted to remember the time that you went to a movie with a girl and you thought it was a date, but she knew it wasn't a date, and then you kind of ruined that friendship, you can do that now in 4K. So enjoy that. Nostalgia trip or sadness trip, whichever. There wasn't anything of interest to me in theaters. I know John Wick Chapter 3 is out, but I don't really care. There were a couple other movies that I was like, not really up my alley. And then it's actually a big week for games, as Rage 2 A Plague Tale Innocence and Sniper Elite V2 Remastered are all out on Tuesday. Rage 2, speaking of that particular game, that'll be the stream on Friday and hopefully is good enough to carry through the weekend. If not, it'll probably drop over to Sniper Elite V2 Remastered. And then I'm planning on playing A Plague Tale next week, as for some reason the game schedule has been super weird, where it's been like, here's a bunch of stuff and then nothing I really care about, and then here's a bunch of stuff and then it's going to fall immediately to that, like, there's not really a whole lot going on. Plus, we're in the lead up to E3, so that kind of exacerbates things. Thanks, Shaun of the Dead. You can catch all the streams right here on YouTube, with an additional Pacific Northwest mystery box unboxing on Thursday. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you like the content, scroll on down, hit that subscribe button, and then you can scroll on down a little bit more and you can let me know what you thought of Detective Pikachu and what kind of cards did you get in your pack. What did you think of the Hustle? Do you like the Sea of Thieves update? What are you looking forward to coming out this week and in the near future? Let me know down in those comments below. If you're watching this video on the day it posts, there is a stream probably going on right now over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex, so be sure to check that out. You can also check out streams on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then be sure to check back every Tuesday for more Week in Review. See you next week. I'd lift my left hand, but it would slam into the table. And I also made it through this entire episode without one 69 joke. Hell yeah!